Good morning. I'm going to share our time for all ages this morning from my garden because we are beginning a summer exploration on the idea of change and how we are a community of change. And I cannot think of a better place to start than in a garden because things are changing all the time in a garden. The blueberries right now are changing from green to blue. And boy, are they delicious. My daylilies are blooming right now. Daylilies change over the course of just one day. The buds open, they bloom, and by the next day, they're wilted and dying. The tomatoes are changing a lot too. None of them are red yet, but these itty bitty flowers are turning into small fruits, growing up into plump fruits, and soon they'll be turning red and ready to eat. One of my favorite plants is kale. I don't know if you like to eat kale, but kale is one of my favorite foods. And I have some kale growing in my garden. This is one of the plants that's doing really well. I actually even have some kale. I'm going to move this camera over to show you from last year. That's this kale right here. And I let it stay because it's making seeds. I'll show you that. You see those? All of these pods are filled with kale seeds. And I'm going to let them dry out because it rained. They're all kind of wet, but they're just about ready to harvest. And then I can hold those seeds and use them to plant my kale for next year. Isn't that amazing? So many seeds. And the kale is actually what I want to talk about related to change. Because change happens in the garden all by itself, like we've been looking at, right? But sometimes we have to change our expectations in a garden too. And that actually is pretty good practice for learning how to change our expectations in other parts of our lives. So I'm going to show you an example of what I mean. If you look down here, do you see this little plant right here? This little guy is a baby kale plant. And that baby kale plant should look just like this one over here, but it doesn't. And the reason is somebody is finding their way into my garden through my fence, and they've actually taken 2 baby kale plants of mine and eaten them so much that I don't think they're gonna live. So we're talking about change, and in this case, a change in plans. My garden changes all the time. It goes from seed to plant to flower to fruit to seed again. And sometimes the best laid plans of which plants are gonna grow don't work out. If our plans don't work out, it's always okay to feel frustrated, to feel disappointed, sometimes to feel sad, sometimes to be really, really sad. But if we can figure out a way to change our plans, to adjust, sometimes those changes can turn into something good. Today, I am going to plant something in the place of those 2 baby kale plants that didn't make it. There's not a lot of choices in a garden this time of year because in New England it gets cold and not lots of plants do really well in the hot heat and can come to fruit by the time the cold weather arrives. But there is one. There is something called a bush bean, a bean plant, and that's what I'm going to put in the ground. And beans are going to do something else that's pretty advantageous for this kale that still is growing around the 2 plants that didn't make it. beans put something called nitrogen in the soil, which is good for the kale. So, a change in my plans may end up giving me an even more healthy and happy kale plant with this one here that made it, and some extra beans to eat sometime in September. I wonder if you can think of some times that you had to change your plans over this past year. Did you think of any ways during all of those changes to make the best of the situation? Did you let yourself feel disappointed and a little sad? Did anything surprise you about how things worked out? I would love to hear about it. We have a big change coming up soon. We're going to be back to in-person church in September, and that is a change too. And that's going to take some adjusting for all of us, and I can't wait to see you. I hope you're having a great summer. Love you.